Hey guys, welcome to everyone to Acting Out Act Together event by working group. This is recorded live on Facebook. My name's Edward. I am your host for tonight alongside Eve, which is the co-host tonight for tonight's speaking session. We have got lovely four, five speakers for you tonight. We got featuring James Brown, the Paralympic bronze medal winner, Patrick Farewell, who's from exile from York. Then we have a 15-minute break. Then we got Claire Farrell, and followed by Divana as well. There will be question and answers afterwards. And of course, I'll be doing a bit myself as well about my talk, about me as well. And apologies for our sixth speaker, Roger, who unfortunately can't make it due to personal reasons, and Tracy can't make it due to personal reasons, but we saw we will have a fantastic night tonight ahead of us. So a big thank you to everyone coming, and a massive thank you to Beanie for doing tech. Thank you. I'll start on myself. I'm Edward. I'm a disabled rebel, and I'm proud to be disabled. I didn't know anything about XR until I came to London in October, not knowing what XR was. It was wet, it was raining, so I asked a nice person if I could share their tent for me to shelter out the wind and the rain. Which they said yes. So I said they held me on the floor. I said I can sit there and if I hold sign up, which I did. But because of that, the police thought I was XR, and they stole my wheelchair from me completely. And they said to me, go home. I had no means of getting home because I had a wheelchair taken. So an XR bloke, I don't know his name, brought a new wheelchair for me, and I actually got to take part. Then I realized the climate change is troubling. And I found myself, yes, I'll be an XR member. This is my first year now as XR member. I'm really proud of it. I've done several actions, like the Pong Valley, and I got to close action in a member way with a nice laying memos for people, a person who was autistic who couldn't attend, but they were part of the friendly group I was in. That was really nice. But when I was at London Action, I decided to glue myself to the BBC studio doors. It was a very stupid idea at first, but I thought it was really good to do. I wasn't thinking straight at all. But because when they did that, the policeman came over and came to arrest me and said, what's your name? And I said, my name is Mr. Blobby. And that's why on my picture, that's me dressed up in costume. Not at the XR, but that's my costume I have, Mr. Blobby. This is so proud of that, Mr. Blobby. There, so I did that, and the problem is when I was speaking to policemen, the press were behind me, and all they heard was Mr. Blobby. And then they asked me, oh, Mr. Blobby, the TV centrist in XR, is it not going to destroy kids' entertainment having Mr. Blobby in there and getting arrested? And instead of saying no comment, I just said blob, 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 blob to the policeman instead of saying no comment because I didn't know what to do, so I just freaked out and said blob, blob, blob. And when I got to the police van, they realized my chair was not good enough fitting in the van. So they released me without charge because they couldn't fit my wheelchair in the back of the vehicle, which was absolutely amazing. And then from then, I decided to carry on protesting. I blocked the road all by myself. I even went down on the action right by Scotland Yard, where I determined, because we disabled people were not treated properly, so I was posting for disabled people alongside other disabled people, which I was really happy to be there. And they tagged me first again that time. And that time, I knew the police knew me otherwise, so I came to the building and it said, I am Scooby-Doo. The second time. So it wasn't the same story all the time. I said I was Scooby-Doo, which is very confusing for them because, oh, Mr. Blubby, Scooby-Doo. So the police got confused, but they're also very good. And when I went up, they dragged me away, arrested me because they didn't give me time to get out of the way. They said, you need to move. And they didn't allow me to go away, and they didn't read out the rights. They just arrested me straight away again. When I was prepared to move out the way doing it, but they never gave me a chance to move. So I never got to not be arrested because I never got a chance to move. But somebody was with me, and a person there wanted to help me out and stayed with me then, and he got arrested as well, and we both got dragged up there. And then again, they couldn't bring me back of the vehicle then because there was no reader accessible, so few people never got arrested as well. So I went back in there and I did amazing. There's a talk in the park by saying how we disabled people are not treated right. We're not in the right. We're not treated the way everyone else is treating us, and they not treat us properly. So I complained, and not going to complain right to the police, but I just said my bit, and then I led a march from the park back up to Trafalgar Square. We were just going to pavement, but I decided, no, I'm going to go on the road. So I went on the road, and everybody just followed me. And even when we got to Trafalgar Square, I never moved onto the pavement at all. I just stayed on the road and put my brakes on and never moved. And lots of people just came around me, started dancing around me on the blocked road. We didn't block it very long because the cars were waiting, so we just did a quick roadblock, but we came off it again. And we still continued. It was absolutely amazing how I actually got to experience it in that end. And I'm proud to be disabled rebel. I'm proud to share what I got and fight for making things out. I'd like to thank you very much, guys, for listening to me. There'll be questions at the end. If anyone got any questions at the end, I'll be happy to speak as much as I can speak. I'd now like to hand over to a very special person who, for me, is very inspirational. He's a Paralympic person, won a bronze medal in the 2012 Olympics, 2012 Paralympics. It's very inspiring to me, thinking that you do have to be normal to do sport, and I love. It encouraged me to do sport when before COVID was on. Wheelchair basketball, which I'm really excited about doing, and I've been accepted into doing the Paralympic team for next year. It was this year, but because of COVID, because of pandemic, I can do it, but I've been moved to next year if I'm well enough. If I'm not, I will do it, but if I'm well enough. So I'd like to invite you to my special hero of all time, such an honor to pass over to James Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward.
Yes, thank you, Edward. Nice to be here, folks. Can you hear me okay? Hear me? Yeah, good. So, yeah, I got injured on my last action, which was 2 days ago in Bristol. So I haven't actually been great since then, and I haven't prepared a 15-minute talk. So I can start and I can tell you some stories, some of them maybe entertaining, some of them may be more serious. It would be helpful if as I went along, one of the other hosts might also sort of prompt with some questions as we go. Is that going to be possible? Nice one. Thank you. Good. So I haven't been on one of these meetings before. Can we start off by kind of having a little bit of an idea of the sorts of things that you would like me to cover, perhaps? Would that be all right?
It'd be nice for you to talk about when you went on top of the plane. That'd be a really nice thing to talk about, because that really made me smile and cry.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's one of a number of actions that I've been involved in. I mean, as Edward says, you know, yeah, I'm also a disabled rebel. I don't think a lot about that, about the fact that I am disabled. I think maybe there's something that people often say, which is that you know when there comes up this question of disabled people as employees, for example, there's a reluctance very often to employ people who are disabled because there's a fear on the part of the employer or the organisation as a whole, and largely those fears are based in ignorance and an unwillingness or a fear of the unknown. But there's something which, a message that I would like to sort of pass on to employers and organisations in that situation, and you'll see the connection here with activism as well in a minute. You know, as a disabled person, you know, you face challenges every day of your life. Life it's not the same. I mean, and you know, by the social model of disability, we are disabled by our environment. So an example for me at the moment is all of the extra signs and floor markings and bits of tape and bollards and barriers and plastic screens and visors covering faces and stuff. All of this stuff that you face when you even just try to go to the shops to buy something, you know, bottled milk. It's really hard, and it makes something which is difficult even more difficult. So that sort of environmental sort of disabling notion has really come home to me through lockdown, actually, and as a result of COVID. But you know, we as disabled people, we problem solve every day, and you know, in the context of activism, you know, that's exactly how I ended up on top of that plane. I think I went along to the City Airport action on maybe it was 7th of October, I can't remember, 7th or 9th or some one day before or one day after my birthday anyway, last year. And when I'm traveling on the underground or the trains in London or whatever, I always use my white stick so that I can ask for assistance, and then the white stick will explain to the person that I'm asking, you know. So I got up early and I set off from my friend's flat to head off to City Airport, and I used my white stick. I had assistance all the way there. Somebody met me at the City Airport, one of the DLR staff, and took me straight in. I was holding I had my white suitcase, and I was taken straight through to the check-in desk with no checks, straight. There were lots of security there because protesters were expected, and I was checked in. And the woman at the check-in desk said to me, "You're very early, Mr. Brown, for your flight." I said, "Yes, I was very worried about the protesters. I didn't want to be held up." So I was taken in through security, and the stupidest thing of all, I was actually wearing an XRT shirt under my coat, and I'm embarrassed to say I've flown far too many times because of my sport. and I should have known better. But there I was going through security at City Airport, not only with super glue in my pocket, but an XR t-shirt under my coat. And of course, I was asked to take my coat off to be searched. And I had a full body search through the scanner, full pat down, the whole lot. I had my case opened, everything. And it was amazing. And nobody spotted my t-shirt. And I have no idea to this day why. So I was taken down to the plane. I knew that I was waiting in the departures area. I had a long time to wait. And I was thinking, right, when are the other rebels going to come through? Because I knew that other people had bought tickets for flights, and I thought, well, we can do something. We can hold hands. We can block a departure gate. We can do something together. And none of them were coming. And I thought, oh no, I'm on my own. What am I going to do? And so I sat there and I got a coffee and I sat there for longer, and then I got my phone out and I started connecting with one of the Signal chat groups. I said, is anybody coming through? And they go, no, we're going to stay through here because it's gone. I said, yep, I'm on my own. I tell you what, I'm on top of the plane with somebody come through and live stream it, and within 1 minute, there was another rebel by my side, and she didn't. As soon as she heard there was an opportunity to live stream this mad guy climbing out of the plane, it's just in that moment that I thought of it. That was one of those sort of challenge and response things. I was faced with a challenge. I was on my own. What could I do? My solution was, let's try to be the first person to climb on the roof of a plane. And I had no idea whether I would succeed. I had a vague idea that I could use the door hinge, part of the railing, and grab the top of the door and get up. And it worked. And the rest, as they say, is history. But one other tiny funny thing about it was, I was taken out to the plane first, of course, as expected. And I went up the steps of the plane, and there was one of the cabin staff waiting at the top. And I kind of leant over to sort of fumble with my bag. I wanted to take my coat and get it inside my bag because I wanted to climb up with as few clothes on as possible. I wanted to, just wanted to make life easy for myself, I guess. So the member of cabin crew saw me coming. He said, Mr. Brown, welcome. Can I tag? And I said, yes, that would be because I have to climb on the roof for a moment. And she just said, you what? And I gave her my bag, and within 2 seconds I was on the roof. And I just heard her put her hand over her mouth and go, oh my God, he actually did it. And the rest was live streamed, so yeah, that was it. The court case still hasn't happened. I don't know when it's going to be, but yeah, that's one of a number of actions that I've been involved with. As I say, I took part in a trial of a brand new action. I'm not going to say too much about it, in Bristol on Friday, and actually got hurt doing it. I was actually assaulted by a passerby. So that was some learning from that action. So I've hurt my back. Yeah, that's just the trials and tribulations of action. Yeah. So what else anything else I can kind of share that might be helpful or interesting or useful to others watching?
Could you sum up why you think what you did was important, even if it didn't stop all planes from flying?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing about attachment to outcomes, isn't it? I only heard about this City Airport thing like the night before, and I had a vague idea of what the kind of intention was. It's why I had a suitcase with me, just in case we ended up occupying the terminal for an extended period of time. And I like my creature comfort, so I had my wash bag, and I had a change of clothes, and I had an air mattress and stuff. So yeah, things transpired that I ended up on top of the plane. I had never done a live stream before, and it occurred to me that would be the right thing to do. So I got my phone out and I started looking at how to do a live stream. And it seemed to work. Even as I was talking, I do remember saying, I'm talking to my phone and I have no idea who's actually watching. And the fact of the matter was that it actually attracted quite a lot of attention. So I think that was it for me. I know that hundreds of thousands of people around the world have seen that live stream. Many, many, many people contact me to say, I realized this climate's so serious until I saw what you did, and that made me stop and think. Others have contacted me directly and said, I've stopped flying because of what you did. There were two sisters on the plane, or they were in the plane beside the one on. They contacted me afterwards. They're twin sisters. Their father lives in London. They did fly from, I think, some. They found me in America. We did. We're by.
I think we've lost the sound there, James. So I don't know if he's quite got to the end, but wow,
No, but
what a speaker!
that big thank you very much, James, if you have comment. It was amazing. I don't know how you could actually, how it's inspiring to vlog. James, are you back?
Could I just say something in case he doesn't come back? I'm just amazed at his motivation with his sport and the things he does in XR. You know, like, are they connected? I was going to ask him. You know, he's one hell of a motivated person. Oh, he's back. So do you use the same sort of motivation? You know, what gets you doing these things, James?
Can somebody unmute him?
I think I've done it. Hearing me? Yeah, cool. When I got involved with sports, I wasn't really clear what my motivation was. I just did it because I enjoyed it. I've kind of more recently looked into what really matters to me. What are my actual core values? And I think the principal motivators for me are something about discovery. So it's about sort of discovery and challenge, you know, doing new things. And I've moved around from one sport to the other. I've done 7 different sports at world championship level. And, you know, I often beat myself up and say, oh, I can't commit to anything. But the fact of the matter is actually that I'm more motivated by change, by challenge, by, you know, discovery than I am by sticking to the same thing. So, I mean, I guess my activism is a bit the same as well. I mean, and you know, I've been involved in the Stop HS2 campaign, and I've been on camps. But what I find there is I can't really stay for more than a few days at a time. I need to be moving on to the next thing, and the next thing, the next thing. And somebody recently asked me, well, you know, can you do a 24-hour lock on? I go, no, I don't think I can. That's too long for me. So. Yeah, I mean, it's all about, it's the other thing that motivates me is making a difference. And, you know, the sport, so when people say to me, which medals are you most proud of? I say, well, they're the ones I don't have. I have a small amount of sight. I have 5% of normal vision, and I'm able to run on a running track unassisted without a guide. What I discovered was I was actually able then to become a guide runner for a blind athlete, for a completely blind athlete. And so I worked with a young lad, an 18-year-old, and went with him to the World Youth Games in Saint-Étienne in France back in the 1990s, where he won 3 gold medals. And I was guiding him. And that was far, far more fulfilling for me than doing something for myself. So I'm looking really carefully at that at the moment to say, you know, how can I apply that to my activism? How can I, you know, how can I support others? How can I work with others? Because I love doing it. I love helping others to overcome their own challenges and barriers. And maybe it's time for me to maybe step back a little bit from the frontline activism and start looking for a role where I can support others. I mean, I haven't been doing it very long, but I guess I've packed quite a lot of experience into the short time that I've done it, and maybe having that kind of that anything is possible mindset can be helpful in terms of supporting other rebels as well. And you know, that mindset is sometimes not a great thing, because if you actually believe that anything is possible, you sometimes never find the breaks, because you just think, I'm not going to let anything get in my way here. I'm just going to keep going until we sort this. And I do feel that about climate change, and I am prepared to go all the way. You know, I am prepared to go to prison. I am prepared to go on hunger strike, if it will make a difference. And I know others are in a similar boat. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
Thank you, James.
Yes.
Well, certainly, I think that you're certainly an inspiration to
Thank
people.
you very much. You're very moving to us all and very inspirational to us all. Just let you guys know, if you want more of this Brown, he'll be speaking at the Disability Inclusion Working Group event, Journeys to Rebellion. So if you'd like to hear more from the fantastic James Brown about his stories, feel free to come down and hear him and ask him more questions. But at the moment, now I'm going to move on to Patrick from York. He's in the local XR group I went on to, and he's new to this. I've not heard the story, but it'd be really nice to hear his side of things.
Hi guys.
Patrick.
Hello. This is the biggest Zoom meeting I've ever been on, so that's quite nice, because our local group, you usually get like, you know, less than 20, so it's a lot of faces, but it's good. Yeah, so I have recently graduated from the University of York with a degree in politics and international relations, and I'm now working as a gardener. In last year, I stood for the local council for the Green Party. So that's sort of my background. And I first heard about XR at the Heading for Extinction talk that was given just a few weeks before the first Declaration of Rebellion way back in 2018. What a world that was. It was still on fire then as well. So yeah, yeah, I think, you know, what a hard act to follow, really, to talk about, like, you know, my activism and stuff. I've been arrested 4 times and de-arrested once. The reason why I got involved in Extinction Rebellion is because I heard this talk where very succinctly it was spelled out to me in a way that I'd always sort of understood through my relentless scrolling of Guardian articles about, like, oh, everything's melting, this seems like it's really awful, and this is terrible, what are we going to do about it? And I was like, there really needs to be some sort of like activist group, and it should have some sort of logo that's got like a big circle with like a shape inside, and then like I used to just doodle it all the time, and then, you know, and then XR came along and I was just like, this is it, you know, they spelled out for me, and then they said, you know, civil disobedience and non-violent direct action is the way that change is achieved. And that spoke to me, because if you know your history, you know that's true. You know that the suffragettes and Indian independence and an end to segregation in America, amongst many other struggles, has been achieved through people standing up to injustice and saying, just because something is the law, it doesn't mean that it's moral. And that's the core of what we do. It's the case that ecocide, the deliberate destruction of entire ecosystems, is legal. you know, that's fine, you can do that. But we all know that that's abhorrent, and it needs to be the case that the people who perpetrate that go to prison, and the people who enable that at the moment are our government and the governments of pretty much most of the world, because they know, as we know, that we are in a climate crisis where, you know, really everything is at stake here. You know, people talk about you know, like, oh, sometimes I speak to people and I'm like, I try to explain to them the magnitude of what mass extinction means, what it means for, like, you know, 75% of the life on Earth that we have to just die, and then upwards of that as the degrees keep rising. You know, we're looking at 4 degrees of temperature increase by 2100. Like, that's the crux of why we're all here, is because that's scary. And people say, like, yeah, but it'll, you know, in millions of years, like, the planet will be fine, you know, it'll all come back. And it's like, so what? How can it, you know, you just say, like, oh, well, it's fine that we'll just let literally billions of people die along with all of the biodiversity on Earth because one day it might re-evolve. Like, I think people have been conditioned to be a little bit crazy by our current capitalist society. And I think, but I also believe, and what I wrote my dissertation on, is that people are inherently good. I believe in Kropotkin's theory of mutual aid, that people and all of society and most life on Earth survives by helping each other and by cooperating. And I think that if we have, the future is either going to be one of increasing fascism, as we're seeing, and of just relentless despair and the most suffering that's ever existed, as the entire equatorial regions just become completely uninhabitable. And so really why we're acting is to save lives, essentially. And I think that's key. So I've just read a message here that says, shouldn't the goal be about protesting rather than arresting? And so I was sort of going to talk about like my experience with arrest, but on the other hand, I also completely agree with that. And I think that, like, all of us should be aware here. I mean, like, hands up, who here has been arrested before? Like, okay, so a few of us, and who hasn't been arrested here before? Because that's, like, you know, just as valid, you know, and just as important and essential, really, to what we're doing. Because, you know, hate to break it to us all, but if we just keep getting arrested and stuff like that, then when things get exponentially worse, as we see that they're going to, then we're just going to be blacklisted as, you know, the ones for the goon squads to mark down as the troublemakers. And, like, really, for us to be successful, if we're supposedly based upon this theory of, you know, it takes 3.5% of a population to achieve, like, regime change, essentially, which is realistically what we need. Like, you know, I can only talk about, you know, XR's demands, but, like, personally, I believe that we need, like, a political revolution. And I think that Extinction Rebellion is essentially why what we do is so important, is that we're setting the stage and showing people that it's okay to speak out against the state when it acts in an oppressive and genocidal manner. And I think we really need to reinforce, like, you know, I've talked a lot about the future and about, you know, species and stuff, but, like, people are dying right now in the global south, you know, because of climate change. And it's not an abstract future concept that's only going to affect our children. People are dying from, you know, starvation, from famine, you know, and that is intrinsically linked to climate change as much as it is to economics and all of that. And so we'll talk a little bit about my experiences of, like, direct action with XR. The first time I was arrested was on, sorry, because that's what this is about. And, like, you know, I totally just started ranting because I didn't have anything to say, but I hope you don't mind. Anyway. Yeah, so I was first arrested back in October 2018 on the action where we took 5 bridges, and I was arrested. It was quite annoying, really, because I came down on the coach from York with all my mates, and we were all really pumped to go block the bridges, and it was like big symbolic first action. And we got there and we sat down, and within 20 minutes, it was just amazing, like all the people. And if you've never been to an XR action, I just can't explain to you like that feeling of just being surrounded by people who, you know, they also care, and they're not that you're all acting, you know, together, like in solidarity. And that's what the whole thing's about, because it's either we act in solidarity or we won't survive. Anyway, and you know, drums, singing, and I start doing some chants, and I'm all like, oh, Extinction, Rebellion, and then instantly just like 5 coppers just came in like a little snatch squad. And we all just sat down, like linked arms and stuff, and they said they were like, come with me. And I was like, oh. And then I didn't, and I went all floppy, and then I got dragged off, and it was quite surreal, really, because it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. I'd been there for about 20 minutes. I got dragged off the bridge, and I spent the rest of the day just in jail, and everyone else had a great day. But you know, but it was nice because I got some cool pictures out of it. But no, but really, one of the things that was most interesting to me about that first arrest was the conversation that I had with the police, because we weren't really known then at the time. And when I was getting like, they were like, oh, all of the things that have now just like, you know, standard lines that people talk about when they talk out against XR, you know, they're like, oh, why don't you just go protest in China, etc. But you can't, you know, you can't mock that, because it's a narrative that's fed, like, you know, unless you spend all your time like obsessively reading about how doomed we are, like, you know, it makes pretty good sense, you know, like, yeah, we emit 1% of emissions a year, and China emits like way more. But, you know, then you say, well, what about historical emissions? What about the fact that we started capitalism? We got this whole game rolling, and it's our responsibility to lead the way, essentially, in towards this new green economy based on mutual aid and whatever that we want. So I got to have a really long, hour-long conversation with the police in the van, because all of the but yeah, really long conversation with the police, where I basically tried to radicalize them and tell them to quit their jobs and everything like that. And now that feels a bit naive, but at the time, you know. but anyway, yeah, so I was arrested then, and then released under investigation. And then I was arrested again in April on the first one was Lambeth Bridge. There was another bridge. It's a bridge, Waterloo Bridge. And I was arrested there on Monday evening. And that was, you know, there was so many people, and we were completely outnumbered by police. And that bridge, if anyone was there, it was a really beautiful thing what was going on there. There were so many just plants, and it was very family friendly, and it really did sort of feel a little bit like, you know, wow, this is the new world on this bridge, let's start from here and go outwards. But yeah, and so I'd just come to check it out, because I'd meant to be in Parliament Square, and I just sort of came, and I realized how close we were to losing the bridge, and I just like sat down and got arrested. Spent all night in a prison cell there. You know, again, spoke to the police a lot, who were just always very inquisitive about, I had so many questions, and it was nice to talk to them, really, even though ACAB. But anyway, and I got charged with that, and I went to court, and I think I was one of the first 3 people to go to court for like an XR action, I think. Yeah, it was. Oh, no, to stand on trial with a lawyer. That's it. And so we put the whole shebang in, and I was represented by Bindmans, who were really, really great solicitors. And, you know, we did the whole, I was acting out of necessity to prevent greater harm, essentially, which we are. We are acting out of necessity to prevent greater harm, because if we don't get the government to act now and stop, you know, emitting fossil fuels, and stop subsidizing, you know, and stop HS2, and stop the relentless assault that they are doing on both, you know, people and the planet, then we're fucked. And that's like, you know, that's why I stood up and I basically said that, and the judge was just like, whoa, 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 and he was you know, anyway, but he was very interested. He was like, I was like, mentioned something about gardening, and he said, it's interesting, isn't it, how much plastic there is in garden centres. They keep giving me these little plastic pots, and I keep trying to give them back to them so they can reuse them, and they just won't take them. And it's they really ought to do something about that, oughtn't they? And I said, yeah, it's criminal. And that's the funniest joke I've ever made, anyway. But and so yeah, so I got found guilty. And given a £300 fine, which I obstinately decided, like, well, I don't think I was guilty, so I'm not going to pay it. So then they were like, right, well, it's 600 quid then. And then, unfortunately for XR York, which I'm eternally grateful for, they actually paid that, and I really do feel like a bit of a knobhead for not paying it earlier. But so that's a lesson for you if you ever get a fine. And then I was arrested twice in October, and I do realise that I'm running out of time. So what's the conclusion here? The conclusion here is that every action that I did has been like some of the best experiences of my entire life, and I've only been able to get 3 days off for this upcoming rebellion, and I'm gutted about it because I really wanted to be there for like 2 weeks or whatever, because I believe that what we're doing is changing the world, and I believe that even if we don't, manage to get the government to say, oh yeah, actually, yeah, everything we do is awful, capitalism's the worst, let's just stop, like, that's not, it's about the conversations that you'll have when you're there on the streets with people who you've never met before, and about that movement building, and about creating a visible display of opposition to this genocidal fascist government, which at the moment there literally is none. Like, where are the protests in the street? Everyone's essentially been bought out by Eat Out to Help Out, and that's a bit unfair, but the point still stands. Like, we need action, and we need it now, and that's why I hope to see you all on the streets. So cheers.
A big massive thank you to Patrick for speaking. You're very amazing, and you really encourage us all to go to the streets. Before we go on break, is anybody like to ask Patrick a question, because he will not be back in time for the Q&A at the end of the session. So anybody who would like to ask Patrick a question before we go on the break? Ow. Ow.
Got to unmute yourself.
Al,
Can someone unmute Al, please?
Can you unmute yourself? I thought it was co-host.
All Zoom meetings are like this, aren't they?
I'm muted now. It wasn't so much a question, Patrick, as to say that was, excuse me, that was absolutely from the heart, mate. It really was. By not sticking to a script and actually just going where you need to go and say the things that you need to say, that's where the real truth comes out. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the street, and I'll look forward to feeding you on the street. Okay? And that's all.
A big welcome to Claire Farrell. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Edward. And hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here and see some faces that I have met before on my journeys around, occasionally, around the UK, meeting people from all around XR. Yeah, it's really like a bit of an honour and a privilege to be asked to come and speak to the working class event, because I mean, I have a sort of personal kind of mixed background. I've got some very middle class relatives, but some very working class roots as well, mixed in. And when I watched your first event online, I did a little cry. So I'm just really, really glad that there's people coming together to organise with us. And I loved the description of a coming out party when it was first discussed as an idea to have these events online and say, hey, we're here, we're working class, we're in rebellion too, guys. So yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It's really, really lush to be here and listen to all your stories. And yeah, I guess I'm feeling today, I'm feeling a bit emotional because we had an event, a meeting earlier today, which was it's quite a small group of us, but we started organising to have these sessions where we were sharing stories with each other. And it was my turn today to tell my life story kind of to the group, and that was quite emotional, and feel like I've already sort of like ripped everything off and like been quite naked in front of a group of rebels earlier this afternoon. So yeah, I'm feeling very sort of like vulnerable, I guess, in that way, which I've often felt is possible with people that I meet in Extinction Rebellion, in a kind of way that's quite exceptional compared to most of the scenarios in society in your life that you find yourself in. So I guess I'll start by just telling you a little bit sort of my background for people who don't know me so well. I came from a very, very broken family background. Lots and lots of sort of disruption in my younger life and problems in my family. Moved around the country quite a lot. I moved schools a lot. My mum died when I was 13. I helped to raise my younger brother after that and became a bit sort of motherly when I was quite a young person. Shouldered quite a bit of responsibility and then ended up being kicked out of home by my stepdad, who found very difficult to cope with the situation that he was in. My dad was extremely old. He fought in the Second World War. So he was a pensioner by the time I was at sixth form. So I couldn't go back to live with him. And so I guess I feel like I've had quite a solitary life in some ways. And I was just talking about what it's like when you sort of, when your parents die, you know you're next. And I think that had quite a big effect on me as a young person. And I guess that's quite interesting when you think about Extinction Rebellion, because what I've kind of said again and again is that I think XR's been constantly always asking us to face death and face our own mortality and think about what life's really about. And of course, if you truly think about your own mortality, then you have to really know that you're alive. And so then that becomes very much about like life as well, and life itself, and thinking about what's the purpose of you being here. And I'm sure everybody here kind of is on the same page as me with thinking that we're here to do something very important at this time in human history. It's tough shit, guys. You're alive in 2020. There's a lot of work to do. And I guess the other thing that I could share a little bit about is my sort of background within XR, because I think there's not enough times when we're telling stories about where XR came from and how people came together. And obviously everyone hears these sort of strange origin stories about people sitting in a cafe in Bristol and deciding to do something very, very momentous. And I wasn't in that cafe because I couldn't go to Bristol that day. But I was already at that time working with Roger. And so my journey into XR has been to first of all be really, really aware of the science and really caring about the conditions of the climate and the environment for a long, long time. And because I worked in fashion and I studied fashion, and I've been teaching ethical and sustainable issues in fashion for over a decade now, it's really been clear to me for quite a long time that there's no amount of green business that you can do that that will make the world a significantly better place. And so my personal practice in sort of making or producing, being creative, felt always like it was never going to be enough on its own. And I think before I came across Roger, I'd really realized that, you know, the world is in dire straits. But a friend of mine who I worked with, Miles, who some of you might know from the art department, we started an art project together called Body Politic, and it was about embodying struggle. And as a fashion designer, I wanted to be able to make the most kind of radical clothes that I could. And for me, in a very overly simplistic way, that meant that they had to speak to people, and it also meant that they needed to be not for sale, crucially. And so I set to this project with Miles, which was mainly originally painting jackets, and then we started to make patches and printing and real-time printing as well, and live workshops, participatory kind of art project. And that really evolved into the art department for Extinction Rebellion quite naturally, which is where we sort of began to do the block printing and all of the patches and wearable kind of messaging, and thinking about how people can carry that message with them when they move on from a protest space. How do you keep that in your drawer? How do you get it out and wear it in different times when you're not on the streets together? And how that starts conversations with people, whether you're on the bus or at work or just in the street. And so at some stage, I don't know when I was working with Miles, he said to me, "Hey, have you seen this guy? He's on King's College, PhD student on hunger strike." And I kind of thought, well, that's it. Why isn't everyone doing that? For some reason, it had never crossed my mind that there was this sort of more, there was a way to sort of ramp up on protests beyond kind of marches or the kind of artistic protests that I'd done in the past, which was more based in kind of situationist art, going and disrupting public space with a bit of a spectacle. But I'd never really done any activism that was really about being super disruptive. And so I eventually kind of somehow got in contact with Roger, I don't know how, and thought, because he was doing this thing and there'd been some press, that I would go to this meeting and there'd be lots of people there. And of course there was a room with about 5 people. And I think they were eating a pizza and watching a video of Gail doing some spray paint on Rupert Murdoch's offices, and watching what happens when you do that and when you wipe it off in front of the police and stuff. And this was the first introduction that I had thinking about dilemma actions and taking direct action in the way that we sort of started then to do regularly. And so I started working on an air pollution campaign with Roger, and we blocked a road about every 2 weeks for quite many months, actually, and then continued to sort of escalate to try and get people sitting in the road for longer until they got arrested. And then we started going and painting buildings. Then within a few months, we were trying to break our bail conditions again and again to see what would happen, facing remand sentences and so on, to see what would happen there. And we didn't get put on remand, actually, and we had to stop because it was Easter holidays and everybody only had 2 weeks to try and do those actions. But we got arrested about 4 times in a week together, myself and Roger and others. And then we did a kind of pop-up campaign, if you like, on the expansion of Heathrow Airport, which was mainly originally focused at the Labour Party. And we a group of us went on hunger strike. A very large group of us started on hunger strike, and I think by the end there was about 6 of us maybe left after 2 weeks. And it's interesting what James was saying earlier about taking that action and the response that you get from people, particularly who know you, because I think that one of the most impactful things that I've ever done was basically that hunger strike, which nobody knew about, and the media and everybody had regular updates, but nobody reported on it. But what it did do was it caused a lot of my friends and family, and even old friends who I hadn't spoken to for a year or so or more, to get in touch and say, "Hey, I'm really worried about you." And by the way, I think you might be going a bit mental, and and I really hope that you're going to be okay, and please stop. I think this is crazy, and you know, it's not that bad, and you know, please pack it in, and varying messages like that. And it was interesting to me because it made those people really listen. And when I replied to them and said, you know, if you're worried about me, then you'll know how worried I am about the thing that I'm trying to draw your attention to. And it did have a huge impact on a lot of the people that I know and that are close to me. And I think sometimes the way that cuts through to somebody's kind of heart, and the way that people feel that, can be something which is much more impactful than almost anything else, when it comes from a very personal connection, and it really moves people that way. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting from what James said. And I guess then, you know, in the journey that I'm describing, there's this hunger strike, and it's kind of a bit in the way, to be honest, because we're trying to like develop all of the look and feel of the rebellion. And I had no idea that it was going to work at all, actually, but certainly not in the way that it has. And it was lush hearing that reference earlier to the early talks in York, because I remember talking to Robin about him travelling the length and breadth of the UK giving that talk, and going to meet lots of strangers and sleep in people's living rooms and give this talk to anyone who would listen, which in the early days was, you know, a room with 5 people was a bit of a result, to be honest. And so that's the kind of journey on the way into XR. And I guess, you know, since then I've been really busy and often really busy in a way which I've found it quite difficult to go out and do actions. So I've only taken part in one direct action with Extinction Rebellion, where I've been arrested because I've never really found the time away from my organising work to go and do more. But last Rebellion, I did a really brilliant action with people at City Airport on bikes, and that was super fun. I'm a cyclist anyway, and I found myself in a very short space of time cycling around a corner, dropping onto the floor, and then I was super glued to a lady whose name I didn't yet know. And yeah, we all became kind of quite great friends from sitting in the middle of a roundabout, chained to our bikes and glued to each other. And so aside from obviously the seriousness of our situation at the moment, and the lockdown, COVID, the glaring inequality which is becoming very visible to the public now, I think, and the recognition of the kind of global suffering that our crisis is causing, and looking at the kind of power dynamics and the bailouts and the doubling down on the damage that power as it stands has been doing since we've been in this position with the suffering under this pandemic. You know, Extinction Rebellion, I'm aware, has undergone a bit of a contraction, and I think people maybe feel the energy in some parts of it has gone a little lower, and the numbers may have gone a little smaller. And I think people are feeling a little nervous about this rebellion, but for sure, I can sense that at all the meetings that I'm in at the moment, the solidarity and the compassion and the power of the kind of love that people are feeling for one another and for what we're doing is showing up in a kind of, it's in something of a kind of unprecedented way, actually, I think. And yeah, so I'm really looking forward to going out on the streets and seeing everyone come out again and come back together. And I heard everyone in the break talking about cooking and feeding each other, and I really hope there's some good food on the ground, because that's also one of my favourite things about XR, is people feeding each other and caring for each other and all of that good stuff that goes on. So yeah, this is really a moment where we've all decided that we've kind of picked a side, and that's taken quite a lot of guts for us to do, because we know we know the risks, and we know what we're facing, and we're in this really together, and that's what I kind of feel the most excited about. So yeah, I'll stop there, I guess, and look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you very much, Claire Farrell. I would like to now, if you'd like to see Claire again, she will be speaking again on Thursday in the Jane Jubilee, so please come back and speak more to her. And if we haven't answered enough questions by any time, we'll be happy to answer questions on our event Journey to Rebellion. And I would like to invite Giovanni to come and speak for us. I've not heard it before, but she sounds really interesting, so I'm interested to see what she comes to bring to us. And again, she will be speaking as well at our event on Thursday. So thank you, Giovanni.
Hi, yeah, it didn't unmute at first. Hi, thank you, Claire. That was really interesting, and everybody else. I'm Giovanna, called Gio. I live by the sea. I'm quite lucky, down on the south coast. I was asked to just talk about my arrest tonight. So a little bit about me. I'm passionately identify as working class, by the way. Always have done, always will do. It's in the blood. I'm very ordinary. I'm not really as exotic as lots of other people. My parents were Welsh and Italian, hardly literate, the pair of them, but they did their best for us. I was from quite a big family. So I've worked all my life. I've got some notes because I'll forget what I've got to say. I've worked all my life. I've had kids, got divorced, been a single parent, and then spent quite a lot of years looking after my mum and dad as they got old and ill, and eventually we managed to have them both die at home where they wanted to die. So that's that's one of my achievements in life. I feel emotional, right? Okay. So now my kids don't need me anymore. They're independent-ish. Haven't got any grandchildren, and my parents have gone. So it's like, right, so what do I do now? And I'm lucky now, I don't have to work. I live on next to nothing, but I don't have to work. So it's like, right, what am I going to do with myself now? So it's like, well, I've waited all my life to get sort of active, and now I've got some space. So, because I've always sort of, the environment's been my passion, and I'm a real socialist as well, because I believe in social justice and looking after everybody, and the two go together for me. I haven't had much of an education. I'm not very complicated or intellectual, but I think I know what's important and what's right. So Extinction Rebellion came to me via my daughter, who's quite active, who said, Mum, you've got to get involved with this. It's just right up your street. And she was right. So I got involved that May 19. I got the local council to, well, I organised a few Heading for Extinction talks and got the council to declare a climate emergency. I think it happened quick because I'm also now a local councillor, and I think they did it because they didn't really know what it was and they were all a bit shocked. But, we got it in there early before they knew what hit them. So I think it was, I don't know that they would do it now, but at the time, I don't think, anyway, whatever. So XR for me, it's like, it just sums up everything really about looking after the planet, looking after people, the craziness of the world in which we live, where everything's exploited and destroyed by rich and powerful people, and working class or ordinary people, I reckon, are just seen as disposable items. Unless we're making money for them, we're of no use or value. And quite frankly, I've begun to think that, they know what's going on, and I reckon they just want a lot of us to die because we're in the way, and they've got AI coming and everything else, and they don't need us. That's my view. So we've got to stand up for ourselves. What appealed to me in XR was I like the simple 3 demands. I thought I can work with them. They're not complicated. I can remember them and hold on to them when I get a bit overwhelmed. And also mass protests and civil, non-violent direct action and mass protests and I could see how numbers is all we've got against the mighty, the powerful and the rich. And I thought, well, I could be one of those numbers. Very simply, I just have to turn up and be with the crowd. And it doesn't take a lot of brains. So I got to the rebellion in October. I liked the idea of mass arrest. I wasn't sure if I was brave enough. I didn't really know what it was about. So I went with an open mind, thinking, will I, won't I? While I was there, I met lots of interesting people, and I saw people who were arrested. I saw arrest scenes. I saw people who were arrested and who came back after arrest. I listened to the stories, and I thought, do you know, I reckon I could do that. So I decided I was going to do it. I had to choose when. I wasn't sure about when, but I did. It's nice to hear about Edward at the disability protest outside New Scotland Yard, because when I read the spec and what it was about, how it was protesting against the police taking away all the things for people with disabilities, you know, their aids and their wheelchairs and their toilets and their ramps, and that all happened at Trafalgar Square. So I thought, right, this is a good one. I'm going to do this. I'm going to stand up for the rebels that are more vulnerable. So that's what I did. So I went to New Scotland Yard and I prepared myself. I didn't know. Everybody said, you've got to take your messages off your phone, because if you take your phone in, well, I couldn't get me all these signal messages off my phone, da-di-da. So in the end, I didn't take my phone. I just took, my daughter said, make sure you've got a book to read, and I had to take my glasses because you'll be bored. So that's what I did. I didn't take anything else because it was the safest way I could do it. So I sat down with everybody else, and sorry, this is quite big in my life and I get emotional when I talk about it. So I sat down with everybody else, but I thought, I'm not lying on the floor, it's wet, I'm not ruining my decent coat, bugger that. So I sat down and they came and got us very quick because, you know, we were outside, you know, their place, you know, New Scotland Yard. You know, I'd seen people sitting around for hours in Westminster and all of that, but they weren't messing about with us lot outside their home territory. So they took us off. And I went to the to Lewisham police station, which I'm told is like got loads of cells, the most cells, you know, around London. And I got out the van, and I was in a queue of about 20 or 30 rebels. Sorry, so funny. And here, about 6 down, is my bloody daughter. I thought, what's she doing here? She's supposed to be in court on Monday, you know. So the mother kicked in, all protective, like, oh my God, you know. So I go between feeling, you know, proud of her as a rebel and then scared as a mother. But anyway, so we went in and did all the business, and they released me in the middle of the night. And my experience was that as I was leaving, the bloke on the desk, I think he's the sergeant, said, okay, you know, that's all right then. And I said, well, I got a problem. I haven't got any money and I don't know where I am and I don't know how to get back. And actually, you know, so he actually, am I reaching on a bit here? So he actually printed me off a travel warrant. And then the other chap in plain clothes took me outside and showed me where the bus stop was. But just around the corner was the, you know, the welcome party, the arrestee support. So anyway, got home all right, da-di-da-di-da. So I just want to say, you know, what we're doing is massively important. We all know that. And I realised that for me, there was a level of safety. You know, my skin's white, got British, you know, got passport, so there's all that safety. And, you know, I'm an older grey-haired woman, you know, it doesn't get much safer than that really, because, you know, a lot of police don't see you as a threat. So, you know, I'm not a young 25-year-old tall man or all that jazz. So I do know that I've got the privilege of safety, and it's not safe for everybody. And, you know, I don't need to get a job again in my life, thank the bloody Lord. But, you know, all that makes it safe. But I want to use my privilege and my safety for what I believe is right. And XR has given me a fantastic opportunity to do that, because I would have never done this on my own. I wouldn't have even known where to start or figured it out. But, you know, with everybody else, it's given me that opportunity. And not everybody has to get arrested. Not everybody needs to get arrested. So if it's not for you, that's fine. But what we do need, you know, is it like behind every arrestee, there's about 20 other rebels. supporting, creating, you know, well, I haven't got those skills, but I can sit down on the floor and get taken away. So don't be put off. Come, help us, you know. I'm just so grateful to those rebels that got me home that night and all of that jazz. So that's my story, really. I think that's all I've got to say, because I was asked to talk about my arrest. Thank you for listening. There you go.
A big thank you very much, Giovanni. You've really caused me to get tingles in my spine.
Great.
Before I hand over to Eve, I just want to say big thanks to everyone for speaking. And I myself too got stuck there and targeted first because I was disabled. Like it's not on. At least we fight together and we were together. So big thank you to that. I would like to pass over to Eve, who will lead us in our Q&A discussion. Thank you, Eve.
Thank you. Thank you both to the speakers after the break, Claire and Gio. Obviously, we didn't do questions straight after Claire's, so people may particularly want to ask Claire and Gio some questions. It could be about anything, but just before that, can I just mention that again, if people aren't able to come to any of the cities for the rebellion, don't forget you can do stuff from home and online, and that pink rebellion pack's got all the details about it, so you can all have a look. I mean, they're brilliant. I'm not techie at all, I'm actually crap at it, but it's not that hard to find stuff that people can do if they can't get there. But obviously the more of us that are there, the better, but make sure you're keeping yourself safe, using your mask and stuff like that. Obviously, do what feels safe for you all while talking to people about what's happening and getting people involved. So I don't know if people have got questions. You can either put your hand up or you can put something in the chat about it. Actually, I was going to start, if that was all right, by asking Claire a question. Just kind of hearing what you were saying, Claire, about kind of at the beginning, and it was just small numbers of people, etc. And I know for some people, like myself, it's been quite difficult to get members to even come on to Zoom meetings, and groups have gone from quite big numbers, some of us to really small ones. And I know where I live in Pompey, sometimes we've done some actions and there have only been about 4 or 5 people going and doing stuff. And I just wanted to ask what you think about, you know, it doesn't have to always be big numbers. I think, you know, like you said, just talking to people that you meet on the streets when you're doing something daft or whatever, just kind of what your thoughts were about that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I definitely felt when we did some of the earlier actions and there was like 5 of us going to you know, do something which we expected to be arrested for, it was often in my mind that people would see who were walking past. It was in a very public space in a part of London, and like there were people always on the ground in support, like a handful of extra people who would go and speak to people about what was being discussed, about what we were doing it for. And at that time we were doing it for like the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, had a consultation on air pollution, and we were doing it to try and draw attention to the fact that, you know, nearly 10,000 Londoners die every year because of the air quality here. And the myriad of different effects that has on young people and the elderly and people who are already sick and people who have their lives shortened by it and all of that stuff. And the fact that it's breaching legal limits. So we were there to sort of say, well, the law is being broken. We're going to come here and break the law. And yeah, being really interested in what happens in those moments when you're there, even if you don't do anything very disruptive, if you don't get arrested, but you're just present around a building, the conversations that you had to have with the people who show up, whether you're, you know, cautiously talking to the police about their feelings, their thoughts and feelings about the situation, or whether you're dealing with a security guard, who often security guards get, you know, quite tense around protests, whether you're like learning all the time about how to do better job of de-escalation when like the public get angry or the security guards get furious and they come running and shouting at you or whatever. You know, it's all a big learning experience, and I guess that's the thing that I was thinking about this afternoon when I was talking about my story of journey to XR. You know, I've never learned so much in such a short space of time as I have doing this work. And you know, I guess I'm a sort of obsessive learning person in that way, that I was always a bit of a geek when I was a kid, and that's what I'm really interested in, is like how it's constant learning. And so when I'm looking at like the difficulties in a group, or looking at the problems I've had with trying to sort of help to reorganize the media and messaging team, or, you know, looking at how any kind of part of the system works, we're creating all of this stuff, and it's a constant sort of act of creativity and learning. And so it's also, there's so much that you learn just from getting to know the people that are doing this work. So I think it's, you know, it's just so rich, basically. So, you know, never underestimate the effect that you have on one person in the street who then goes, oh, I didn't know, I'm going to join, you know. And those people matter. Every single person really matters, don't they, as you know. So yeah, so don't be put off by your small numbers, and keep going, because we felt like quite stupid some of the time. Some of the things that we've done, I felt really quite silly. Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because I find direct action and non-violent direct action to be kind of this weird combination of kind of something that's very quite humiliating, like gluing yourself to a door, and also sort of heroic at the same time. It's this like kind of fabulous paradox in that way, which I think is which I also find like fascinating as a personal experience.
Thank you, Claire.
I'm going to have to go now, but thank you very much, Eve, for hosting, and thank you very much for all the speakers coming to speak. You have been very inspiring.
Thank you, Edward.
James Brown. It'd be nice to have you working with other people. I'm really proud to be a disabled web voice. Let's be on the street, doing my bit, even if the police don't like us, and even if we hard, we do our bit. So we all work together, and we nice to see you as made whenever possible. There's accessibility talk tomorrow night, and it's put in the chat there. Also, please join Claire, Giovanni, and James Brown on Thursday for our Journey to Rebellion. They're inspiring, even inspiring stories to get us ready for rebellion. And in solidarity, thank you very much, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Edward.
Thanks,
for
Edward.
hosting. I think it's really good, actually, that we've got such a mix of people that feel that they can join in, and that we're all welcomed. You know, whatever you are, whether you're working class, middle class, upper class, even if they want to come and join, anybody can. Whatever your political persuasion is. I've kind of got my own political persuasion, and I think actually that's got nothing to do with this. For me, it's about what's happening with the climate, and trying to focus on that if I can. Although I do believe in climate justice as well. Anybody got their hands up? Anybody want to ask a question of either Patrick or James or Claire or Giovanna this evening? Could be about arrest or protest or anything else.
Any questions from me before I go? Any questions from me before I go?
Or Edward, yeah. Can't see any hands up. Oh, Al. Who's your question for, Al? You're muted.
Mute myself.
Great.
Oh,
Better.
there we go. There we go. There we go. It's not a question, really. Although I have to say I've been I've been a bit sideswiped by some of what's been said this evening. Been really, I found some of it really emotional. I did what I did because I could do what I could do. I could take my food trailer down to London in October because that was within my capability. They were that was my resources and so on. What I'm trying to say is, shit, my lighting's really bad here. Never mind. Something that's absolutely fundamental is sustenance, right? If you want to do anything, if you want to get people there, if you're wanting to get people to stop and participate, and by that I mean the general public, the passing public, yeah? If I give you some food, you have to stop and talk to me for a few minutes. Yeah? It's an amazing tool. It's incredibly powerful. It really is. It's when you look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you look at however you want to kind of perceive it, if somebody feeds you, then they buy your ear, they buy your mind for a short period of time, and there's nothing more fundamental than hunger. Yeah, and we all get hungry, and if you're sitting around on your arse doing nothing all day, then you don't really get that hungry. But if you're a working person, you know what hunger actually is. You know what it means. Yeah, and I found that my route to inclusion, yeah, to include anybody is to feed them, and I found that to be incredibly effective in the part that I've played in the actions I've taken part in, and I would urge everybody. I really would urge everybody, work on your sustenance coordination, to use a tag, yeah. And the Extinction Kitchen is here to come to wherever you are and to help to feed people. I'm at the end of the phone. I've got an email. I can Zoom you. I can help to teach how to do mass catering, because it's actually dead fucking easy. It really is. It's only food. Everybody eats every day. Yeah, there's nothing mysterious about it. There really isn't, and it's no harder to feed 1,000 people than it is to feed 20 people. All you do is you scale it up. Yeah, just don't lose your cool. Yeah, it's just hard work. That's all. Yeah, and there's nobody knows about hard work better than the working class. And the Extinction Kitchen is here to support you all. It really is, and that's my purpose on this planet. For as long as we've got it. Over to somebody else.
Thank you, Al. We have had a question from Foa. Can't see you, but you might be on the next page. Just asking about, as it's a working class event, wondering how to engage with the group, as it's difficult for them to see the climate crisis. And sometimes it's hard for them to take time off to protest when they're trying to make ends meet. I think that's a really good point, and it's actually quite true. What I would say is that that's kind of one of the reasons that XR Working Class have been trying to get together and talk about the issues for working class people and think about how we can engage with them and where. And it has been really difficult because of COVID-19, because obviously it's not so easy to go out on the streets and actually talk to people where we normally might, especially if they've already got stuff going on in their communities, which is probably the best place to talk to working class people. But we have said about doing Zooms and doing Heading for Extinction talks with people like that, and actually going and asking them, not just going in there to sort of preach to people, but actually to talk to them about what are the issues for them where they live, and for us to then be trying to help work with them on what their issues are locally. You know, because I mean, I don't know about where you all live. Where I live in Pompey, we've got terrible air pollution, and actually the places that it's worse are in the areas where a lot of working class people live. You know, they tend to be the people that have got less cars, and yet they're suffering the worst effects from it, both on their health and issues to do with housing, etc. So we kind of have to be prepared to go and do stuff in the community with them. It's not about just doing the protest and getting arrested and all that stuff. Obviously we have to do that, but we also need to do the community stuff too, and I think they have to go hand in hand, and that's what we're all working at. And if you're interested, we meet at the moment, the national group meets on Mondays once a week, and we've got Tuesdays, we've got our regional people who are meeting together and supporting one another to do stuff in their regions. And we haven't yet set up in all the regions, so if you're interested, get in contact with us. We'd love to see you. We'd like you to get involved with us and try and tell more of our working class people that we meet every day about what's going on, and that we'd like them to help. And whether it's about actually coming and protesting with us, or whether it's about doing stuff in the background, everything that we do that contributes towards it is important. I don't know whether anybody else in the team wants to comment on that, or anyone else that's got another question. Gio?
Yeah, one of the things that, a couple of the things that have come to us as well in our group is that, like, you know, sometimes XR feels a bit heavy in like paperwork, documents, things to read, blah, blah, blah. That can all be a bit heavy. So I reckon if you're trying to engage people, you know, just try and cut all that stuff out. And also all the software, you know, all these groups. I worked out that there was about 8 different ways of communicating. You know, I mean, there are people that I know that don't have the internet at home, and it's like overwhelming and all of that stuff, and jargon and big posh words. You know, if you want to reach lots of ordinary people, and we haven't even talked about the people who have English as a second language, you know, where must, you know, etc. So all of that stuff. And we were trying to do a very short, simple Heading for Extinction talk. It hasn't quite happened yet, but we'll see anyway. But just keep it simple and jargon free. Not too intellectual, thank you.
I see that one of the people here has spoken about being interested in setting up something in the east of England. Nikki, fantastic, because we haven't got a group there yet. And if you want to put your email address in the chat or send it to us privately in the chat, we will contact you and invite you to come along and join us for some of our meetings. But you are all more than welcome. So fantastic. Mark, you've got a question or a comment?
Yeah, we found it more effective in our part of the world, in the northeast of England, to invite people to the land. We've got a down-to-earth permaculture site which has been running, and we found it really effective where people could actually get on the land and chat and start digging holes. Al's part of us as well with the Extinction Kitchen. We've got a full kitchen set up on there. The idea, to repeat what you might have heard before, was that we concept that we sort of created is to food grown by rebels, cooked by rebels, in this case our Extinction Kitchen, and then fed to the rebels. Because we're taking produce away with us this time on the rebellion, so we can profess to say that we've actually grown it ourselves. We're cutting it ourselves and we're feeding it to the people that need it. So to get back to the working class thing, we found it more effective that way, to stimulate them by actually getting them working, if that makes sense. Like getting your hands dirty and digging holes and weeding out and stuff like that. Just one of the ways you can engage with the working class. So it has been difficult at some point. Structured conversation as well, we found. Don't go like running in there, shouting and screaming, we're ex-Arco and Jones. We found that to be negative, not for us, but for them. So it was a bit more structured. That was, that's it really, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Just want to say a big thank you to all of our speakers, starting with Edwards and James, Patrick, Claire and Giovanna. Sorry, 2 of our speakers weren't able to come this evening, but I'm sure that that you all enjoyed the people that we did have here this evening. So thank you very much to all of you for giving up your time to talk to us without charge. And thank you all for coming along this evening. If you want to make any comments in the chat, any feedback, that would be great. And if you want to just say a word as you check out, that would be lovely too. And hopefully we might be able to do some more stuff after the rebellion, but I know most of us guys are hoping to be out on the streets, either down south or further north, but we're all going to be around. And I already recognise a few faces from people who've been in some of our other groups and Zooms, and also some new names and faces. Come and talk to us. Thank you very much. Good night.
Sleep well, everyone. Love and peace.
See you in a bit, guys. Roll on next week.
Thanks, everyone. Lots of love.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're just waiting for everyone to go, I think. I'm on mute.
Eve, did you get that Nicky's email?
Get what, sorry?
No, Eve, did you get that email address?
I've saved the chat, it's okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Can I just thank all the backroom folk as well for looking after everything in the background, because that all seemed to go really smoothly.
Bean is a hero.
Thank
you. Well done, Beanie, lad.
Yeah.
It wasn't that smooth at this end.
Oh. Well, it seemed it out here, so thank you.
It was very smooth.
Always
Always there for us.